Hello and welcome to another episode of Strategic Dialogue that I bring to you in association with USI, India's oldest military think tank, which is now celebrating its 150 years. We continue our conversation regarding strategic issues of immense importance which come in the background of and the backdrop of the Galwan Valley clash, the present Indo-Chinese equation, and more importantly, is there now finally a realization in New Delhi that India needs to now deal with the twin challenges of Pakistan and China together and not view them separately as it has been doing so for so many decades. Joining me in this conversation is Major General B.K. Sharma, who is the director of USI, and besides that, a keen China watcher, somebody who understands the region very well. Also in the conversation is Lieutenant General Harish Thukral. He's been the defense attache to Pakistan and understands what really is Islamabad and more importantly, GHQ Rawalpindi thinking as far as New Delhi is concerned. Okay, first things first, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me in this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I also thank the director of USI for giving me this opportunity to share my perspective on this very burning topic today.
General Sharma, let me start with you, sir. You know, while we all know the friction points that exist between India and Pakistan, and I'm going to come to that in a bit, but first up, you know, as far as the Sino-Indian relations are concerned, there are multiple friction points that exist. And, you know, when you talk about these areas of contestation, how do you view them and how many in your assessment are there actually right now present that New Delhi needs to deal with and tackle going forward?
Thank you, Gaurie. I would propose that in terms of these friction points, I would talk about Ladakh and Northeast. And General Thukral has been the General Officer Commanding in Sikkim, and also he's been General Officer Commanding looking after the central sector. So he may be better informed to deal with these two sectors. Mm-hmm. So coming to Ladakh, as we know, the situation there is that they are very much there in Dapsang Valley in large number. Some partial disengagement has taken place in Galwan, Gogra, Hot Spring area, though there is a friction point in patrolling point of Gogra, 17 Alpha, where the disengagement is not taken place. And they have dug in their heel in the area of Fingers. So where do we go next? And the further build-up is taking place, as we know. So where we go from here? See, Chinese have number of options if they have decided to press on and do not disengage and de-escalate. They could make a push in Dapsang Valley further. And that is one area because not too many clashes have taken place there. And second area they could open is in the area of Chomar, Damchuk. There is a place called Spangur Gap, you know, which is very close to Chashul. So these are the new areas, friction points. At the moment, I don't think Chinese will attempt this because whatever political objective they wanted to achieve, that they have been able to achieve. But should India do something in turn, then there is a possibility of them opening other areas, and we should be prepared for that. Now, what are other options there? Probably that we can discuss subsequently. How do we restore this situation? In regard to Northeast, as we know that their main military and political objective there is Tawang. But Tawang is very well defended there. We have what you call the wall of Tawang. But in Tawang, there is an isolated sector called Mago sector, in which there is a disputed point called Yangtze. And that particular area is today air maintained. And since their infrastructure is very well developed on the other side, so this is another area where they could foment some kind of a trouble. And the most important here is the 5 valleys in rest of Arunachal Pradesh, what we call is RAL. And these valleys are Sabansari, Siam, Siang, Dabang and Lohit Valley. And in Subansari Valley, there is a contested area or disputed area called Asafila. And in another valley, which is called Dabang, there is an area called Fishtail. Now, these are disputed areas, and again, they have very well connected network from their deeper roads into the border areas here, whereas our connectivity is not so well developed. So we have to be on our guard, and I'm sure we would have taken certain preemptive actions to plug in certain vulnerabilities there so that Chinese are not able to cause another friction point and try and sort of embarrass us there. So these are the other areas, and I would request General Thukral to talk about central sector
Sikkim and the central
Sikkim.
sector. Yeah, yeah.
Central sector, yeah.
Yes, General Thukral.
Right. I think, this recent incident which has happened, it has to be seen in a slightly bigger perspective to understand the core reasons why China has done what it has done. Now, this raising the belligerence level all across the borders of India with China marks a radical shift in the role of the dice by the PLA and the Chinese CMC. Now, why I say that is that because we have seen over the past 2 months large number of experts, both of Indian origin as well as of the world, putting forth a large number of reasons as to why China has gone this belligerent. Now, to my point of view, the one single reason which is very important to understand is abrogation of Article 370,
Okay.
and what that article's abrogation meant in its military implications.
Right.
Now, this military implications, if we don't delve on, we will not be able to really understand the whole game of China. And China, as we all know, what it puts into the show window is seldom that commodity which it wants to sell. So from my point of view, as far as China is concerned, our policy has been basically very simply put three-pronged. That is to compartmentalize all the issues, and secondly, prevent conflicts or disputes in becoming conflicts, and thirdly, hope that the peace dividend or the resultant peace dividend of having tranquility and peace on the borders and making progress on the other issues to be able to solve the border issue in some later time frame.
Thukral, I'm going to come to the Indian strategy and whether it needs a reset in just a bit. But before that, sir, just for the benefit of our viewers, the area in the central sector that you think are areas of contestation where there is a possibility of a flare-up, if you could just take us through those.
Okay, in the central sector, if you want to have specifics, then there is an area which is north of Nelang in the Harsil sector, which is known as Palam Sumda. Now, this is an area in the central sector which where the Chinese claim about 1400 square kilometers of area on differing perceptions of the LAC. This is one of the flare-up points, and recent reports have also indicated that there is some concentration of the PLA opposite this sector. The second and more important and more conspicuous area which is contentious between India and China is the Barahoti Baul, which is traditionally being claimed by China with a area of about 750 square kilometers. Now, in the central sector, otherwise the central sector has been traditionally very benign and very tranquil, and China basically uses this sector to convey its responsible image to the world and to India that it is keen to solve the border disputes. This is the only sector where both countries have shared their perceptions of the LAC with each other.
Okay.
But these are the two areas which are important. In the Sikkim sector, again the boundary issue is more or less settled because the watershed is quite easily definable there, and the delineation is possible. But recently, the Nakula sector, which flared up, where there was a face-off and a very, very belligerent face-off, that is an important area for the PLA, because getting hold of that area gives the PLA an opportunity to make ingress into our area and cut off our defenses in that area to some extent. There is another an area where possible flare-up can happen is the finger area on the plateau. Now, this finger is not the same finger as we see in the Pengongso area, but the name nomenclature is the same. This is also an area which the Chinese have claimed quite consistently over the last 4 decades. And there are large number of face-offs and standoffs and incursions which happen in this area. So these 4 areas are such where you can expect a flare-up. But I also feel that the recent actions at Lipu Lake by Nepal, where they have enlarged their territorial boundaries and their territorial areas on the Lipu Lake Pass, as well as going all the way westwards up to Lampia Dhura. Now, this is another place that that PLA, if it starts to make ingress from Lipu Lake eastwards, it can actually cause some anxiety to us.
So, which brings me to ask the question, and this I put forth to both of you, is that when you have possibility of flare-ups on multiple such areas, then how do we go about minimizing them? Because, I don't think that you can absolutely remove the possibility of a flare-up, General Sharma, but how do you minimize that, especially in the wake of what happened at Galwan Valley? What can be done? You take us through that, sir.
See, I think we are more than prepared now to prevent Galwan-like incidents because China has shown its hand at least, and we would have taken certain preventive actions. The first and foremost thing is, how do we restore status quo ante in Ladakh sector if China doesn't willingly withdraw through negotiation? And we want to confine the whole conflict to that sector itself, and we don't want to proliferate it to other sectors. Then we may have options of holding them wherever they made these contestations. And there are other areas where we could probably go and sit behind, 5 to 10 kilometers inside, using our special forces and some of our forces, and give a fait accompli to Chinese. But Indian government by design is not resorting to this kind of a option for the simple reason that we do not want war to escalate. But if push comes to the shove and there is no other option, then this option can be exercised, right? Then in other areas, there is very well defined levels of preparedness we have at the border. Initially, we have a border management posture. Depending on some indicators of enemy activities, we call it as an enhanced border management posture. And then we have a hot war deployment. And how do you, transgress, or I would say you transfer from one to another, is based on what you call is the battle indicators. And those battle indicators are based on your intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability. When you see the enemy build up, you automatically graduate to the next level. And then what you do, you address some of the unheld areas and lightly held areas where our deployment is not too much. And then also you have what you call is the rapid reaction forces, which are acclimatized and which can restore adversity, and which, if need be, can also take the battle into enemy territory, so that at the negotiation table, you are quite confident to deal with them from a position of strength.
Mm.
I'm sure that all these actions India has already taken, and it is more than prepared for any further eventuality that may crop up. Concurrently with this is more important is to build up our air degradation capability, because all the buildup of forces that will take place through these highways, if we are able to cause attrition to their follow-up echelons and they are not able to build up the war stamina, then that is what is needed. But more important that I see is now that probably we are for a long haul here. Chinese are not showing any indicators to withdraw. So we have to probably go for a winter deployment of a large number of troops,
How
for
tough
which
will that be,
we
sir?
have,
How tough will that be?
for which we have to have a sustainable logistic build-up so that our forces can sustain, because there is a critical window before the onset of winters when Chinese may do something nasty, and then the winter sets in and we are not left with any options. So all these contingencies, I can tell you with some degree of confidence, would have been worked out, and we are not in for another surprise from China.
Okay, that's a very important point you've made. Then let me then ask you this fact that the Chinese are also now relying increasingly on the fact that the China-Pak Nexus that has been on, not for now, but for decades. We all know the proliferation of nuclear technology that happened, how Pakistanis got nuclear weapons, so on and so forth. But the fact is, now it has reached a state where India will have to be completely prepared. General Sharma, I want to first ask you this question about the two-front war that has been talked about for the last so many years, but is now a reality that we need to be completely prepared for. And then I get in General Thukral as well on what is it that not Islamabad but Rawalpindi is thinking. But yes, General Sharma first.
See, from our perspective, there are a range of options which Pakistan could exercise. The first option is probably there could be a thinking that they are not in a position to open another front here because of their internal dynamics and whatever is going on in Pakistan. So one option is keep your responses limited to infiltration and go for a hedging strategy. That means you take a defensive strategy along the LAC. This is option one. Option two with them is, together with Chinese, go for very sensational kind of terrorist strikes, what happened at Pulwama and Uri, and now put the ball in Indian court to respond. Now India is on the horns of dilemma. If you respond, what we did during Balakot, they will put the whole blame on India that we opened the second front, right? And if India doesn't respond, then they will say India is weak and it could not size up to any provocation from Pakistan, and all this Balakot, and it was a hollow talk. Third thing is, together with Chinese, they could go for some nibbling actions. That means some of the important posts in northern Ladakh or elsewhere in the LOC sector, they could go for nibbling action and they could provoke you. And the last, which is a worst case scenario, with a wing from Chinese, they could open another front in Ladakh wherein they can muster sizable forces, and while Chinese are making a push through eastern Ladakh, they could also come from the northern Ladakh and have some kind of a confluence, a convergence of the two thrust lines. Of all, what I feel is probably, if I was there in Pakistan, I would confine myself to some Pulwama-like, Uri-like sensational strikes and hit up the line of control without getting fully embroiled in a conflict with India.
General Thukral, what do you think?
Yeah.
In Pakistan as a country, or Pakistan military to be precise, was actually totally taken aback by this abrogation of Article 370, and its image in Pakistan took a very, very intense beating. Now, linking from there, that an institution which totally controls the narrative in Pakistan. It has propped up a civilian government which cannot do without its support. All the strategic decision making, which was always in the hands of the Pakistan Army, now even domestic decision is totally controlled by the Pakistan Army. So when such a thing happens and it is not able to mount an effective and a powerful response to the abrogation of Article 370, the army gets a little jittery. And why does it get jittery is because today Pakistan Army's main role, or any army's main role, is basically to safeguard the sovereignty of that nation. But in Pakistan, the role of the army, because of its economic interests, has got so entangled with the political class as well as with the economic interests that any dilution of that role makes the Pakistan Army extremely sensitive. When its image takes a beating and it is not able to do anything about it, it actually comes to a conclusion that that what Pakistan Prime Minister is repeatedly saying, both from the portals of the Parliament as well as in the GHQ, that India will launch a false flag operation. So it is mortally scared at this point of time that the belligerence or the escalatory ladder on which India has indicated that it will not shy away from climbing, especially after the Balakot strikes, especially after reiterating its claim of retaking POK, Pakistan Army feels that Indian Army can, at any point of time of its own choosing, can push the LOC westwards, the view to take away or take up sensitive, strategically important areas, which will strengthen the Indian Army's overall position on the LOC. Now, if that happens, then the Pakistan Army's image will even take a further beating. And if that image takes a further beating, then its economic interests also get impacted and quite adversely.
Absolutely. But then, General Thukral, let me ask you this, from a layman's perspective, for the benefit of our viewers, just to simplify it, even now, in the midst of the corona-induced slowdowns the world is facing, there have been $11 billion worth of deals that have been signed between China and Pakistan in the CPEC corridor, gaining and giving an insight into the fact that this corridor is going to now get a further thrust from the Chinese, indicating that they're going to try and ensure that they further build up the psychological pressure as far as the two-front war that has been talked about. I want to understand from you, sir, that the possibility of such an escalation in the backdrop of A, what happened at Galwan, and B, of course, also that, you have the first anniversary of Article 370 abrogation that you spoke about at the beginning of this conversation.
See, CPEC actually is one of the leverages which many in the world feel that China has that leverage over Pakistan. But of late, when the whole Pakistan experts are actually highlighting the negative impact of CPEC on Pakistan, and it is going to enter the deepest debt trap, which it is seen for many years, CPEC has given Pakistan Army a reverse leverage over the PLA, because CPEC is one of the crown jewels of this this BRI network. And if CPEC doesn't work well, the Chinese investments, which have been of immense magnitude in Pakistan, are all going to go into a very risky profile. So Pakistan Army at the moment holds immense leverage over the PLA, and that is why Pakistan Chief of Army Staff is going overboard in ensuring and propagating from all platforms that that CPEC and its security, its projects and investments will remain secure. They have recently appointed one of the most, you can say, sought after generals of the Pakistan Army as its as a CPEC's chairman, and also raised a big 15,000 worth force to guard the CPEC corridor all along from Kashgar down to Gwadar. So from this angle, what I'm stating is that Pakistan today has got a dish on its plate which is fully delicious, Sino-Indian conflict. And to say that Pakistan army will not exploit this particular
Possibility.
possibility is going to be actually naive thinking. Pakistan is a very, very opportunistic state, and it can do it in many ways. However, when you see it in the full context, as far as China is concerned, a prolonged stalemate on the border will actually suit its maximum interests. However, if India takes a misstep and decides to take any escalatory step, that will be actually immediately, violently, and very, very in a planned manner retaliated by China, because that is why they have amassed their forces all the
Yes.
segments of the border, that is Western Front, Central Front, and the Eastern Front. Before taking these incidents in Ladakh, they have actually minimized their vulnerabilities. Doklam was one of the vulnerabilities of China, which they have now minimized. Nakula was one of the vulnerabilities which they have minimized.
Yes.
Lipu Lake was one of the vulnerabilities they have minimized. In Ladakh, all across the Ladakh place or Ladakh border, wherever they had even a minutest of vulnerability, they have very, very meticulously minimized it. So
Okay.
to say that quid pro quo can go very easily is in the plans. There are many opportunities, but it is going to be a very, very considered, very important decision, because the moment we go up the escalation ladder, that gives the chance for Pakistan to jump in the fray, and then it has got a plethora of canvas to, it can make more terrorist attack in the valley.
Yes.
It can heighten, heat up the LOC, have a collusion easily, but any chance of collusion in northern Ladakh, and if any collusive action takes place, and we are mildly surprised also, those gains cannot be offset by very easy means. And Pakistan fully realizes that. So
Then let
collusivity.
me then ask this to both of you, that we are speaking now when the first anniversary of Article 370 abrogation is taking place. It's been a year since the historic decision. It was very tough for both China and Pakistan to absorb or digest. They've gone to UN and raised it on multiple occasions and all platforms. General Sharma, that if a year has gone past, are we then to believe that maybe the most violent reaction that could have been anticipated from China and hence Pakistan is now almost done? Or should we still prepare for maybe more of that, given that across Western Europe and even in US, there are a whole host of rallies and protests that are being funded and put forth by the Pakistanis even now?
So see, there is a 19-point program which Prime Minister Imran Khan has already made, right? And they are not going to let go this so easily, particularly when India is beset with a major border challenge with China. So we should expect more and more rhetoric and also some concrete actions from Pakistan, because what do they prove to the people of Kashmir and to rest of the world? And probably this is the best window available to them to do something, and therefore we should be more than prepared for any contingency, be it a sensational terrorist strike or be it some kind of a trouble they would like to create at the border. Two-front war for us is a reality, and if you permit us, maybe I'll tell you what are the steps that we need to take, to address some of these weaknesses that we have. So should I continue?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So you see, first and foremost thing is that there was a problem between different segments of our policy makers here, whether two-front is a reality or it is a myth. Whether China is a military threat, there were people who said
Yes.
China doesn't want war with India. Now these kind of assumptions have been put to rest. And what we need to recognize for good is the two front in the times to come is a reality. And therefore, we need to have credible deterrence stroke war fighting capability. And now what needs to be done? Rather than resorting to these knee-jerk reactions and going for these emergency acquisitions and things like that, we need to now address the operational hollowness which has built into our land forces over a period of time in terms of critical deficiencies of equipment, ammunition, spare parts and things like that. We have to build up this logistic capability for winter deployment of additional troops, which is not an easy task, you know, to maintain one brigade size force in Siachen. It requires a lot of effort, and now to have 35,000 people living in sub-zero temperature, it's a colossal task which needs to be met. Concurrent with this, my confidence level as far as ground forces is concerned is quite high. Concurrent with this, we need to have an anti-axis, anti-denial strategy towards China, what they have been doing against the United States of America. And here, we have to have deep penetration and deep strike capability in terms of induction of more Rafale and S-400, because unless you're able to interdict their highways, you know, all the highways which are coming south of Sangpo River, or the Western Highway, Shikwane, this Gaurie axis, you know. So if you do not have the wherewithal, your weapons, your intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance and targeting capability, how are you going to fight them? You're not going to fight them only at the tactical level about 8 to 10 kilometers.
Yes.
Those capabilities need to be built up. Sooner or later, Indian Ocean region is going to hit up, because that is where we have a competitive advantage. And therefore, we need to have some kind of an anti-denial capability so that the Chinese Navy is not able to cross Indonesian archipelago, Strait of Malacca and some of these other states and come into the Indian Ocean, for which we need to build up an anti-submarine warfare capability, anti-ship ballistic missile, anti-ship cruise missile capability. Then, you know, we had put this Mountain Strike Corps on a back burner. There was so much of flip-flop, whether we need it, we do not need it, and we lost a lot of time. It is high time that we revisit, and that too very, very seriously, creation of a Mountain Strike Corps. It can be a discussion by itself. What should be the form of Mountain Strike Corps, whether we need 1, 2, that's a discussion by itself. But a Mountain Strike Corps has become an inescapable operational requirement today.
Yes.
Then the larger issues are that we've been grappling with this national security strategy, a joint military strategy, and a theaterization which will foster integration and jointness and synergy. These are the steps which have to be put on a fast footing and to be done on an accelerated manner, so that we can take a holistic view and not look at this as one episode, but a long-term strategy of deterrence and war fighting, both against China and Pakistan. And for that, last point is, no matter what happens, even if we have to eat only the salt and, you know, roti, but we should not curtail our defense budget, because everything depends on.
And I was coming to just that as I wrap up, that the fact is, out of $71 billion, which was in 2019, a lot goes into routine expenses. Very limited is left for big purchases like Rafale. Add to it the economic crisis that we are facing, and most people now, or analysts, expect that the defense budget may actually cut down going forward. And in such times, remains to be seen how it will impact our defense preparedness and our overall capabilities. Thank you so much, General Sharma, as well as General Thukral, for taking out the time in this conversation, the attempt being to declutter and simplify what really is happening on our borders and the larger strategic issues that, frankly, all of us now need to be seized of. Thank you so much for joining in this conversation, hosted by me in association with USI.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.